I stand before you today to discuss the issue of capital punishment, also known as the death penalty. Capital punishment is the execution of a convicted offender by the judicial system. And I believe that the death penalty should be abolished because capital punishment is not a way to resolve a problem, nor is it a form of deterrence for capital crimes. The amount of problems associated with capital punishment is massive, ranging anywhere from cost to innocent people losing their lives. The only way to resolve these problems is to do away with capital punishment. I want to persuade you to reassess your views of capital punishment. My arguments today will address the following issues: the injustice and immorality of capital punishment as a deterrent to crime, and the possibility of innocent lives lost. We've all heard the saying, two wrongs don't make a right. And how many times as a parent do we tell our children that statement? As adults, we need to follow this advice. Murder is murder, and it's wrong no matter what it's ruled constitutional. Michael Parrish, he's the author of the Supreme Court and Capital Punishment, Judging Death, wrote about the important Supreme Court case that was dealing with capital punishment. In 1972, the Supreme Court, Furman v. Georgia, ruled that the existing law, the imposition and carrying out of the death penalty, constitutes cruel and unusual punishment in violation of the 8th and 14th Amendment. According to the American Civil Liberties Union website, they feel that capital punishment is an intolerable denial of civil liberties. Capital punishment is not a matter of statistics or scientific fact. It's more or less a matter of belief. The Bible tells us, "Thou shalt not kill." It does not tell us, "Thou shalt not kill," except in the cases of capital crimes. Capital punishment wastes time and energy of our court system and is unduly burdens the criminal justice system. In times like these, when the budget crisis is where it's at, capital punishment is counterproductive. The anti-death penalty website states that executions cost 4 times as much as life in prison, $2 million a person versus $500,000. Spending 23 hours a day in a tiny cell for the rest of one's life is not a picnic, and I feel is a fair punishment. And as a taxpayer, I would like to see my tax dollars go into something more beneficial. Also, the majority of people that support the death penalty believe that it deters people from committing gruesome crimes or truancy or anything else that causes for the death penalty. If the death penalty was a method to stop violence, then perhaps it wouldn't be unjust. However, I found no credible studies that show capital punishment acts effectively as a deterrent to crime, murder, or any other capital offense. When someone commits a capital offense, the majority are under the influence of drugs, alcohol, or they're committing the crime at the spur of the moment. Therefore, the person committing the crime is not thinking about the consequences of his actions. And so how can the U.S. constitute that it's a deterrent to crime? Indeed, the current crime rate is a strong reason to believe capital punishment does not work as deterrent. As Helen Prejean, the author of No Peace and Vengeance, reported, 2/3 of the countries in the world have now abolished the death penalty in law or in practice, which includes our neighbor to the north, Canada, and south of the border, Mexico. Prejean reported that in 2000, the United States rate for robberies was 65% higher than that of the Canadian rate. Its rate for aggravated assault was double, and its murder rate was triple. When comparing the crime rates between the U.S. and Canada, you can see that Canada's crime rate is substantially lower than the U.S. These figures are prime examples of why I believe that the death penalty does not deter potential criminals. But there is yet a third issue that we must confront, and it is humans are errable and they make mistakes. Capital punishment carries a risk of executing innocent people. Wrongful convictions in the United States date back to the 19th century. Astonishingly enough, Michael Radlett, Angelo Badu, and Constance Putnam, authors of In Spite of Innocence, Erroneous Convictions in Capital Cases, revealed that between 1900 and 1985, there were 350 cases of wrongfully convicted individuals. The worst part is 23 of the 350 wrongly convicted had already been executed before they were found innocent. Ernest Ray Wells was one of those human errors. He was sentenced to death back in 1986 for the murder of 2 women. The New York Times reported that Ernest Ray Wells was released after 17 years on death row when he was found innocent and charges dismissed. In 1992, Roger Keith Coleman was not as lucky, and he was executed because evidence that pointed to another individual was never submitted. Capital punishment is final and irreversible, which is a strong reason to put an end to the death penalty. In conclusion, we must realize that capital punishment is a horrible injustice upon our society, and we must put it to a stop. Playing God and deciding who to kill in retribution is not the right of the government. Secondly, we must realize that capital punishment is not an effective deterrent to crime. And finally, and most importantly, capital punishment is irreversible. I urge you, all of you, to support capital punishment, to reconsider your views and see its injustice and its ineffectiveness as a deterrent to crime and the risk of executing innocent people. Thank you.